On an unusually far, but Tianjin Eco-City is meant to be driven by clean energy, with a third of its power coming from renewable sources, pedestrian-friendly roads, and green buildings. It's a showcase for a government-led initiative to build cleaner cities, but attracting new residents has been slow. It's far away from other urban centers and is expensive to buy into. They have attracted a certain crowd of young, environmentally conscious families, but not enough yet. It's early afternoon and lots of smaller residents are leaving school. Nice to meet you. What's your name?
Yes, my name is Nancy.
I'm Guillory. Who's this?
It's my baby.
Hello. Hi, Bob.
Bob.
Hello. How long have you lived here?
Less than 1 year. Less than 1 year.
Less than a year.
Yes.
Brand new.
Yeah.
Why did you move here?
Yes, I like this environment. I think it's very nice. And the school is very good.
It's a good school?
It's for my baby.
So these are all your friends. Look. It's your friend?
Schoolmate.
It's your schoolmate. Oh, you guys are buddies. Just thinking of Dr. Gifford's place attachment theory. I mean, this place is only a couple years old. It takes time to form those attachments and to get that routine. But it is starting to happen. It's not determined if this place is going to work out or not, but if it does, it could be the future of sustainable living here in China. All I know is that since I've been in this country, this is the first time my lungs have stopped burning. Climate change is a daunting global issue that our generation is facing. But it doesn't have to mean we as individuals don't have power. Of course, global agreements are important, but it's also important to make a personal commitment to the places we're attached to and give it our best, using whatever tools and talents we've got in hand. Call it a backyard revolution.
I'm Donique in the Seychelles to find out how a global movement is trying to save some of the most endangered species on Earth.
With all the destruction that we have caused, we need to conserve and protect the species.
Here in America, citizen scientists are using low-cost technologies to take on big polluters.
To hold corporations accountable, we need to put these low-cost tools in the hands of people who are most effective.
From the front lines of climate change, Earthrise, at this time on Al Jazeera.
"100 years ago, Britain and France made a secret deal to divide the Middle East between them.
Now, we can draw a map.
But what were the lasting effects of this agreement?
There's an original sin to Sykes-Picot. It's that those borders were drawn without consulting the people who'd have to live within them.
Sykes-Picot, Lines in the Sand, at this time on Al Jazeera.
In everything, there is a detail. To analyze is to understand. To bring clarity and context, Al Jazeera evaluates the facts to bring clear, balanced, and in-depth news to life. Al Jazeera, the news never stops.
I have no doubt all the police officers know what is happening.
A 5-year investigation is culminating in an ugly portrait of parts of South Africa's police force.
Is this a coincidence or what?
The story unravels through local journalists, eyewitnesses, and whistleblowers.
The unit was a death squad.
Africa Investigates returns with echoes of apartheid at this time on Al Jazeera.
The leader of the Polisario Front, Western Sahara's independence movement, has died. Hello there, I'm Felicity Barr and you're watching Al Jazeera live from London. Also coming up, as Iraqi forces continue their assault on Fallujah, the UN says civilians trapped in the city are being used as human shields. Airstrikes on the rebel-held Syrian city of Idlib, Russia denies it was behind them. And France's unrest over labour reforms deepens, with rail employees due to join other workers out on strike. We begin with breaking news. The leader of Western Sahara's Polisario Front, Mohamed Abdelaziz, has died. Abdelaziz has been in charge of the separatist group since 1976, when its founder was killed. The Polisario Front began fighting for an independent Western Sahara when it was still a Spanish colony, and fought on when the region was then annexed by Morocco in 1975. UN Chief Ban Ki-moon addressed the issue last month when he used the word occupation to describe Morocco's rule over the region. Well, Al Jazeera's Abdelmounem El Amrani joins us live now from the Moroccan capital, Rabat. And what more do we know about Abdelaziz's death?
Well, what we know so far is that a lot of websites and the official news agency of the Polisario Front has confirmed the death of Mohamed Abdelaziz, who was suffering from a stomach cancer for the last 4 or 5 years. What we still have to confirm is where he died. Some reports suggest that he died in a military hospital in Algiers, that's the capital of Algeria, while other reports suggest that he died in a hospital in the US. Still has to be confirmed. We know also that the Polisario Front has announced a 40 days transition period during which the president of what the Polisario calls the National Front will take over as the leader of the Polisario and subsequently the president of the self-proclaimed Arab Sahrawi Republic, Democratic Republic. This man's name is Khatri Addo, and the Moroccan government, so the Moroccan negotiators, they know very well Khatri Addo. He used to be the chief negotiator of the Polisario Front during the Manhast UN-led negotiations between Morocco and the Polisario Front that took place in 2007, 2008 and 2009. Khatri Addo will now take over as the leader of the Polisario Front. After 40 days, there will be an extraordinary congress of the Polisario to elect a new leader who will succeed to Mohamed Abdelaziz. Felicity?
What in the long term might this mean for the Western Sahara? And will the Polisario Front, do you think, decide on any change of policy or tactics?
Well, this is still we need to wait and see what would happen. What is sure is that Mohamed Abdelaziz was the leader of the Polisario Front for the last 40 years. That's a long period. He was also one of the historic founders of the Polisario movement in 1973. He took over in 1976, and since then he's been re-elected once and again as the leader of the Polisario Front. Since 1991 and the ceasefire between Morocco and the Polisario Front, the issue of Western Sahara went into a sort of diplomatic seek for a solution under the auspices of the United Nations. And Mohamed Abdelaziz, the last time we've seen him was last March, when he received the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon in the Polisario refugee camps in Tindouf, that's in southwestern Algeria. Since then, we haven't really seen him in public, and a lot of reports suggested that he was very sick and apparently he passed away. The announcement of his death was made today, but according to some sources I've been talking to in southern Morocco, they said that he passed away yesterday. But this is also really not confirmed. So now who will take over after him? That's a wait and see. There are some names who've been, here and there in some media, but it's a little bit early to make a confirmation about who will be the successor of Mohamed Abdelaziz as the leader of the Polisario Front.
Good to get that update. Abdelmounem El Amrani joining us from Rabat. Thanks so much. Turkey has accused Russia of killing 60 people by carrying out airstrikes on the Syrian city of Idlib, which is held by al-Qaeda affiliate Nusra Front. The strikes hit the city on Monday and Tuesday, but Russia denies involvement, saying its warplanes weren't doing combat missions anywhere near Idlib at the time. Al Jazeera's Hashim Albara reports now from the Turkish city of Gaziantep, near Syria's border.
Rescuers retrieving bodies from under the rubble. This is one of many areas targeted by Russian warplanes in Idlib. Many people are believed trapped inside destroyed buildings. Civil defense teams have found more bodies and are frantically searching for survivors. The only hospital in the area is overwhelmed with the rising number of wounded.
They are treating 70 wounded. 5 had severe injuries and died. Unfortunately, most of those being treated are women and children because of the airstrikes hit residential areas.
Idlib, the rebel stronghold in northern Syria, was captured last year. Since then, the city is constantly targeted by Russian airstrikes and Syrian helicopters dropping barrel bombs. Entire neighborhoods have been destroyed, as well as field hospitals. Muskilda Zankada works for Doctors Without Borders, which had to evacuate medical teams because of increased fighting. She is worried about deteriorating health services in northern Syria.
There is the issue of course, access and providing support and delivery of drugs and medical supplies to the health facilities is very much challenged by the fact that there are constant breach to the ceasefire, so meaning that the access roads or the constant air raids are really putting us in a difficult situation.
Attacks across Syria have increased despite a ceasefire. The Syrian opposition warns talks to end the war brokered by the United Nations are at risk. A senior opposition negotiator has resigned, accusing Russia and Syria of using the talks as an excuse to prolong the civil war. Turkey is condemning Russian airstrikes in Idlib, calling for the international community to rein in Russia's growing military intervention in Syria. The Turkish statement is no surprise because of the strained relations between Moscow and Ankara. Hashim Albara, Al Jazeera, Gaziantep.
The UN's refugee agency says ISIL fighters are using civilians as human shields in the embattled Iraqi city of Fallujah. Iraqi forces and their tribal and militia allies are trying to retake it from ISIL, which has been launching counterattacks. Aid groups have warned of a human catastrophe in Fallujah unless civilians are allowed to leave. Nearly 4,000 people have already escaped, but about 50,000 others are trapped. Al Jazeera's Omar Asali has more details.
A spokesperson for the Iraqi Ministry of Defense told Al Jazeera that fighting is still fierce in the southern edge of Fallujah city. He said that neither ISIL nor the Iraqi government forces are in control of the village of An-Naimiyah, which is key for the Iraqi security forces. It lies on the southern edge of that city. Now, earlier in the morning, ISIL claimed it had ambushed the incoming Iraqi security forces, killing over a dozen of them, and they said they've used suicide attacks and also snipers. Now, the Iraqi government version of the events is that the Iraqi forces managed to repel the attack and that the offensive on Fallujah is going according to plan.
A harrowing image of a drowned baby in the arms of a rescuer has been distributed as part of efforts by activists to highlight the suffering of refugees. Sea-Watch, a group from Germany, shared the photograph to demand safer passages for refugees and migrants trying to get to Europe. Paul Chederjian has more details.
The lifeless body of a drowned infant, cradled by a German rescuer. A humanitarian organization has published the photo in the hope of renewing public attention to the biggest refugee crisis since World War II.
It's always a difficult decision to publish such a picture, but in this specific case, we decided to send the picture out because of the graveness of the situation.
Last September, the drowning of 3-year-old Aylan Kurdi made headlines around the world. The body of the Syrian boy washing up on a Turkish beach was a call to action for some. The two photos are just a glimpse of millions of untold, desperate journeys. More than 200,000 refugees have arrived in Europe so far this year. Activists want the EU to grant safe passage to all those seeking refuge.
Since May 23rd, more than 13,000 people were rescued. It's been an intense week and demanding week, and the sea conditions were particularly good.
Most refugees are escaping from Syria and other war-torn countries. Many are trying to reach safety by crossing the Mediterranean in flimsy boats operated by people smugglers. Humanitarian organizations say the bodies of many who drowned will never be found. The summer weather in the Mediterranean is creating a surge in boats setting out from North Africa.
I hope that we can at least touch some people with this, because we have to know as Europeans we are responsible for this situation.
Aid workers fear the initial public shock of the plight of the refugees has worn off, and the everyday stories of sea rescues and drownings are becoming just another news headline. Paul Chadurjian, Al Jazeera.
The US State Department has warned Americans of the possible threat of terror attacks in Europe during the continent's summer tourist season. It specifically mentioned major events and transport as possible attacks. Alan Fisher has the latest from Washington, D.C.
There is a consistent warning on the US State Department website telling people to be careful when they travel to Europe, because countries there are vulnerable to what the State Department describes as transnational terrorist organisations. Now, as we head into a big summer in sport in Europe, there's obviously concern given the attacks in Belgium and in France late last year and the beginning of this year as well. They particularly mention the European Championships, although how many Americans would actually be travelling to Europe for that isn't entirely clear. But they also mention the Tour de France, and many Americans do actually make the trip to support teams during that month-long event in France. And so there is a warning to avoid big crowds, to stay across current affairs and to make sure that you're in touch with the embassy. They also mention specifically the Roman Catholic World Day of Youth event, which is being held in Krakow in Poland. It's for 3 days at the end of July, and they're saying that people should be aware that that also could be vulnerable to any possible attack, and therefore to be alert. The warning says that people should stay away from crowds. Obviously difficult if you're going to something like the World Day of Youth, which is expected to attract about 2.5 million people, and of course the hordes of football supporters that are going to be descending on France. But this is really just at the start of the summer. The State Department making sure that Americans are aware of the danger and they take any necessary precautions to keep themselves safe.
Still to come on the programme, learning a new way of life. We meet former rebel fighters in Ethiopia who are choosing peace over war. And Taiwan's world-leading tech sector shows signs of losing its edge. We'll take a look at efforts to reboot the country's big moneymaker.
Hello, the skies remain largely clear across southern Africa. No surprises there, it is, of course, the dry season. We've got some cloud, though, just making its way through the Western Cape into the Southern Cape. Might see 1 or 2 showers coming in here, but the majority of showers, well, straddling Madagascar, a little bit of wet weather around on Wednesday, and indeed going on into Thursday, maybe pushing across the Mozambique Channel into northern parts of Mozambique by that stage. Elsewhere, as you can see, it does stay generally dry until we get up into Central Africa, where the rainy season is, of course, well and truly underway. So some showers there around the Ethiopian highlands, just driving their way across South Sudan into Chad, Central African Republic, all the way across into the Gulf of Guinea. So more lively showers there, particularly across the southern flank of West Africa. Southern areas of Nigeria seeing some sharp showers. Same again for southern parts of Ghana, pushing across into Liberia and maybe even to Sierra Leone. North of that, more sunshine coming through, and hot sunshine for some as well. We do have a desert low just making its way across Algeria, pushing up into Tunisia for Wednesday. Some sharp showers coming in here, and we'll see that wetter weather just moving out into the Mediterranean by Thursday. A hot one once again in Cairo with a high of 41.
What we do is go beyond headlines and deeper into developing stories. With analysis and commentary, we provide a wider perspective. We bring together different views, different angles of events which shape the news. And we make sense of how the global context impacts lives.
Inside Story, at this time on Al Jazeera.
Welcome back, and a reminder of the top stories on Al Jazeera. The leader of Western Sahara's Polisario Front, Mohamed Abdelaziz, has died. He led the independence movement since 1976 in its fight for an independent Western Sahara. Turkey has accused Russia of killing 60 people with airstrikes on the Syrian city of Idlib. Russia denies the claim, saying its planes weren't flying combat missions anywhere near Idlib at the time. And the UN's refugee agency says ISIL fighters are using civilians as human shields in the Iraqi city of Fallujah. Iraqi forces are continuing their fight to retake the city from the fighters. A nationwide rail strike in France is due to get underway about now. Industrial action over new labour laws has gripped the country for weeks. Earlier, near Marseille, hundreds of protesters blocked access to a logistical area used by trucks. It's all part of efforts to get the government to scrap a law that would make it easier for employers to hire and fire people. Our correspondent Jonah Hull joins us live now from outside Montparnasse station in Paris. And has the strike started yet, Jonah?
Yes, Felicity, welcome to a wet and blowy Paris, 7 p.m, just the tail end of the rush hour now. Gare Montparnasse, one Paris train station behind me there, just as rail workers' unions get their strike action underway. They'll be disrupting something like 50% of journeys across the country for as long as it takes, they say, for their demands to be met. Now, the rail workers' unions have their own specific sets of demands. However, they have decided to throw their lot in, as it were, with strikes and protests that have been going on for 4 months here in France against a deeply unpopular labour reform law. You may recall last week it was the energy sector that was hit with long queues forming at petrol pumps and some pretty violent scenes of confrontation between workers and police. Well, this week it continues. The rail workers will be on strike on Thursday. The metro workers will join them on Friday. Air traffic controllers will join them. The government, meanwhile, says it isn't budging on the law. Well, the workers' unions say nor are they.
All these strikes, Jonah, I guess they must be having some sort of an effect on the French economy.
I'm sure they have had, and they certainly will have, as a sort of summer of strikes, if you like, looms ahead with these two sides pretty much at loggerheads, Felicity. The government, I mean, it's an uncomfortable position for a socialist president, Francois Hollande, and a socialist government trying to reform France's famously rigid labour laws. They want to do it because they think that's a way of bringing unemployment down, currently in double digits. They want to give employers more leeway to be able to fire employees, and in so doing give them more interest in hiring and creating work and jobs for employees. They also want to ease France's restrictive 35-hour working week, extremely expensive as well, because people have to be paid overtime for every hour above that they work. So the economy is bound to take a hit. There's also concern about the European Football Championships, not just security concerns, mind you, but other disruption from strike action. They're due to kick off next week. And also, of course, the tourism sector here still struggling to recover after terrorism attacks last November. So the strikes that lie ahead, not welcome news for anybody, really.
No, Jonah, in Paris, thank you. The Organisation of American States is calling for an investigation into whether Venezuela still qualifies as a democracy. The oil-rich country has been hit hard by falling oil prices, with shortages of many vital things from food and foreign currency to medicine. Well, the head of the OAS has called the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, a petty dictator, accusing him of blocking the opposition and putting loyalists in the Supreme Court. Brazil's transparency minister has resigned after leaked recordings suggested he tried to undermine a multi-billion-dollar corruption investigation.